This episode is presented by Invest Puerto Rico. If you believe your business can go anywhere, Puerto Rico is the place.
Hello and welcome back to Equity, TechCrunch's flagship podcast about the business of startups. This is our Monday show where we take a look at the weekend and get you ready for the week ahead. Today is June 3rd, 2024, and I'm Rebecca Balan, senior reporter at TechCrunch. It's a gorgeous morning here in New York, which is just what we need to get through this morning's tech news. Let's get caught up. On today's show, we have a look behind the scenes at EV startup Fisker's collapse, X's new rules to allow adult content, the wild west of special purpose vehicles and private AI startup shares, and of course, a pitch deck teardown from Haya Comps, this time for the Raw dating app. Let's get started. Let's dive into the big news that matters. For our first story of the day, we're looking behind the scenes of EV startup Fisker's epic collapse at the hands of its founder's whims. Tell me, listener, what do an autonomous pod, an electric pickup truck, and a solid-state battery-powered sports car all have in common? They're all innovations that Fisker promised and never delivered on. Today, Fisker, which was founded by famed vehicle designer Henrik Fisker, is on the brink of bankruptcy after only having delivered a few thousand electric Ocean SUVs. Employees who spoke to TechCrunch for this well-reported deep dive by Sean O'Kane say the blame rests on the shoulders of the husband and wife team running the show. The Ocean can be held as the perfect example of Fisker's flaws, paved with hubris, power struggles, and the repeated failure to set up basic processes that are foundational for any automaker. The SUV has been riddled with mechanical and software problems. Employees who spoke to TechCrunch say they were drowning from a lack of structure, inadequate customer service, no properly functioning warranty system, and a scarcity of spare parts, among other failures. Customers have thrown dozens of lawsuits at the company, which has now laid off almost all of its overworked staff. There's more to this story, so please check it out on TechCrunch.com. Next up, X, formerly Twitter, has tweaked its rules to formally allow adult content. Here we go. Over the weekend, X added clauses to its rules to formally allow users to post adult and graphic content on the platform. What could go wrong? Apparently, the porn will have to be consensually produced and labeled as such to be allowed on the platform. These rules also cover AI-generated videos and images. X's owner, Elon Musk, who apparently has the media diet of a 14-year-old boy, has already hosted adult content on not safe for work communities on X. X's page on adult content policies reads, quote, "We believe that users should be able to create, distribute, and consume material related to sexual themes as long as it is consensually produced and distributed. Sexual expression, visual or written, can be a legitimate form of artistic expression." Listeners, I'm all for freeing the nipple and sexual positivity, but this spells trouble to me. Here's my thinking. 1, it's really hard to prove that adult content was made consensually. 2, in this age of deepfakes, where women are targeted with fake porn almost 100% of the time, this is deeply troubling. 3, we all know that you can post content that breaks with the rules of social media platforms, and it often takes time for that content to come down. By that point, thousands of people could have screenshotted deepfake or revenge porn and shared it across other platforms, ruining people's lives. 4, Twitter has already been a historically unsafe environment for a lot of women, and that doesn't seem like it's alleviating under Musk's kooky stewardship. In other terrifying social media news on this week's episode of Late Stage Capitalism Hellscape, Trump, now a convicted felon, is amassing followers on TikTok, the video platform that he had previously tried to ban when he was president. To spare you the need to watch it, his first post on Saturday night had UFC CEO Dana White saying, "The president is now on TikTok." Then Trump says, "It's my honor." Then Trump walks along a testosterone-fueled crowd at a UFC event in Newark, New Jersey. As someone who actually enjoys the UFC, I really hate seeing it get corrupted to be a Trump rally point. And before we head into today's pitch deck teardown, a look into how small, unknown investors are beating out VCs to buy shares in the hottest private AI startups like Anthropic, Perplexity, and xAI. VCs are dying to invest in these companies, and they're willing to pay exorbitant share prices for coveted spots on their cap tables. But smaller, unknown investors, like family offices and high net worth individuals, are taking these spots by using special purpose vehicles, or SPVs. These allow multiple parties to pool their money to share an allocation of a shared company. So there's usually an investor who has direct access to the shares of these startups, then sells a part of their allocation to external backers, often charging a pretty penny while also retaining some profit share. SPVs aren't new, but they are growing amid a perfect storm. Early backers and sought-after AI startups are exercising their pro rata rights, which lets them buy more shares each time a company raises so they can keep their percentage ownership. Then, rather than offloading shares, maybe because they're too expensive, the early investor can create the SPV and fund it by raising more money from others and charging additional fees to do so. What's more, some SPVs are being formed on top of other SPVs. Look to what happened when Menlo Ventures raised a $750 million SPV to invest in Anthropic earlier this year. The result has been a bit of a Wild West, high-risk, buyer beware situation, where the terms between SPVs vary significantly. That's it from me this morning, but keep an eye on TechCrunch for even more tech, startup, and venture news. As always, if you want to dive deeper into anything we talked about today, we'll have links to the stories we covered in our show notes. Now, let's check in with Haya Kamps for today's pitch deck teardown. Take it away, Haya.
What's next in tech? That's not the right question. It's where. Puerto Rico, where an entrepreneurial ecosystem pulses with connectivity, capability, and possibility, where the most competitive tax incentives in the U.S. fast-track success, and hard work is rewarded with sunsets and turquoise waters. If you believe your business can go anywhere, Puerto Rico is the place. investpr.org/TechCrunch.
Thank you so much. All right, folks, it's time for another glorious pitch deck teardown. If you think about it, pitch decks are a lot like dating. They're awkward, they're full of red flags, and occasionally you find yourself a keeper. So this week, we're swiping right on the Raw Dating App's deck. The Raw Dating App, living up to its ever-so-subtle name, promises to revolutionize the dating scene by ditching the fake, TikTokified, heavily filtered photos. Instead, they offer a raw, unvarnished experience. The company has allegedly raised a cool $3 million in a friends and family round. Now, I say allegedly because I haven't been a very successful detective on this one. There's no press coverage of the round, and most of the company's media buzz seems to be self-authored by the founder, gracing the pages of Forbes, Entrepreneur, and a flurry of syndicated press releases. Still, the deck was quirky enough to pique my interest, so let's dive in. Now let's start with what works. I thought the company had a really good problem slide. Basically, it lists a number of statistics that helps highlight the glaring issues in the dating app world, including catfishing, scamming, and people just being jerkosauruses. Still, the slide could have been even better if the company had cited its sources for those stats to transform my skepticism into trust. The other thing I really liked was the company's solution slide. It is refreshingly clear, and it clearly states what sets it apart from other apps. It gives a really good snapshot of how they plan to address the pain points of online dating, and it doesn't overlap too much with the product details. Very cleverly done, I really enjoyed it. The other thing I really liked was the clarity of the company's target demographics slide. The app says it targets young professionals and students, particularly women aged 21 to 27, who seek genuine interactions that are free from common pitfalls of traditional dating apps. I think maybe 21 to 27 is a little bit narrow, but the luxury of this is that you have an incredible level of clarity. So you have a good idea of the socioeconomic status of the people you're talking about, and all the pieces that go with how to reach your customer. Having good clarity about your target demographics is a really good way to open up the door to how you market to these people. And that really plays into how you tell the story of your startup to investors. Very cleverly done. Now, regular listeners will know that this is the part of the show where I take a look at what didn't work in today's deck and what you can learn from it. Now, instead of breaking it into 3 separate areas that need improvement, I want to focus on one particular piece of advice, which is making sure that your deck is machine-readable. The thing that reminded me about this was slide 16 in Raw's pitch deck. I don't know if it was a traction slide or a projected growth slide, maybe a combination of both. I don't know if it shows traction from the past or projections into the future. It's all possible. But I'll tell you this thing. If it confuses a human like me that is spending day in and day out staring at pitch decks, it'll definitely confuse the hell out of an AI. I should know. I've built an AI that looks at pitch decks, and it mostly gets things right, but occasionally it parses a team slide as a go-to-market slide, and the results are completely broken as a result. And that's kind of the bad news. As if it wasn't enough to make your deck visually appealing, you now have to cater to the whims of algorithms as well. But don't panic, I've got some tips. In fact, last year I wrote an article about this on TechCrunch, and I'll make sure to drop a link to that in the show notes. Anyway, picture this. You've spent countless hours crafting a pitch deck so stunning it would bring a tear to the eye of a statue. The graphics are smoother than a baby dolphin, and your slides look like they belong in an art gallery. But guess what? The VC you just sent it to has outsourced their soul to an AI, and now your masterpiece is being digested by a heartless machine that couldn't care less about your impeccable font choices. Welcome to 2024. The truth is, your beautifully, meticulously crafted slides often get converted into a lowly PDF. And PDFs, my dear friends, are the kryptonite of text extraction. Your AI overlord investors will want to be able to pull out key information, like your market size and financial projections and team bios, with the ease of swiping on a Tinder date. If your text is embedded in images or locked away in unsearchable formats, it may as well be written in invisible ink. So how do you appease the algorithm gods without sacrificing the aesthetic appeal of your deck? Well, it's actually simpler than you think. Here's a few rules. First of all, embrace the power of text layers. When creating your slides, ensure that all of your text is in a format that can be easily copied and searched. That means no text embedded in images, no fancy font that require a decoder ring, and definitely no obscure file formats that would confuse even a seasoned cryptographer. Second, imagine that you're talking to a robot toddler. Use clear headings and bullet points. Remember, the AI isn't here to appreciate your Shakespearean prose. It's looking for data that it can categorize and analyze. So lay it out in a way that even the most simplistic algorithm can understand. Third, and this may hurt a bit, ditch the heavy visuals. Yes, your charts and infographics are beautiful, but if they're not machine-readable, they are useless. Instead, supplement them with text descriptions that clearly state the important numbers and trends. Think of it as giving your AI buddy some reading glasses. You might even consider using alt text on your images. I know, right? What is this, the World Wide Web? And finally, let's talk about the elephant in the room, SEO for pitch decks. I can hear you groaning, but hear me out. Just like you optimize your website to climb in the Google ranks, you need to optimize your deck for searchability. Make sure you use the keywords that investors are likely to search for, spell out industry-specific terms and acronyms, and for the love of all that is holy, don't cram everything onto one slide. Spreading out the information with good titles helps the AI easily parse and categorize everything. I get it, creating a machine-readable pitch deck can feel like adding a bunch of extra work. But it's actually a necessary evil in today's tech-driven investment landscape. Swallow your pride, fire up your presentation software, and start making those tweaks. Because if a pitch deck falls in the forest and no AI is there to read it, does it even make a sound? Good luck, and remember, the machines are watching. So just to quickly recap. Clearly state what sets you apart from your competitors, because that helps investors co-dream about the size of your potential future. Make sure you get to the numbers and cite your sources for those numbers so everybody gets on the same page. Target the target. Remember that explaining what your target audience is can be really helpful to investors in order to get a fuller picture of what you're trying to do and who you're doing it for. And finally, keep the machines in mind when you're preparing your deck. They're much more pervasive than you might think, and they're not as smart as they would like to think. Alright, that's it for today's episode, but don't panic. Equity will be back on Wednesday. If you want to keep up with us in the meantime, you can follow me on @Haya on X, and you can stalk your little heart out and follow the Equity team on X and Threads under the handle EquityPod. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back in your ear holes before you know it.